$2.8 billion was about to vanish in 30 seconds. Camille's revolutionary heart diagnostic system crashed in front of 300 medical elites, until the man who publicly destroyed her reputation 6 months ago stood up and walked toward her stage. Dr. Adrian Sinclair, the cardiac surgeon who called her technology dangerous amateur hour, was now rolling up his sleeves to save her company. When their hands touched, reaching for the same diagnostic tool, she realized this disaster might reveal something far more dangerous than a broken machine. The Manhattan Medical Innovation Summit had been Camille Edmond's chance to prove that Edmond Technologies deserved its place among the medical giants. Her cardio-predict system, 9 years of sleepless nights and brilliant innovation, was supposed to demonstrate how artificial intelligence could save lives faster than any human physician. Instead, the massive display screen flickered with error messages while hundreds of the world's most prestigious doctors watched her career implode in real time. Camille's fingers flew across the diagnostic tablet, her mahogany skin glistening with perspiration under the harsh conference lights. The silk emerald blouse she'd chosen to project confidence now clung uncomfortably to her shoulders as whispers rippled through the auditorium. She could practically hear the headlines. Edmond Technologies crashes at critical demo, failed IPO recovery attempt, amateur hour indeed. 6 months ago, Dr. Adrian Sinclair had used those exact words, dangerous amateur hour, to describe her life's work at the American Heart Association conference. His devastating critique had nearly killed her IPO, cost her company millions, and left her fighting to rebuild credibility in an industry that had always questioned whether a black woman from Harlem truly belonged among Manhattan's medical elite. Now, as her system's diagnostic algorithms spiraled into failure, Camille spotted Adrian Sinclair in the third row. The distinguished cardiac surgeon sat perfectly still, his silver-touched hair catching the auditorium lights. Those intelligent gray eyes that had once dismissed her now fixed intently on her struggle. She expected to see satisfaction in his expression, vindication that his criticism had been correct. Instead, something unexpected flickered across his features: concern. And then, without warning, he rose from his seat. "Dr. Edmond," Adrian's voice carried clearly across the silent auditorium as he moved toward the stage with purposeful strides. "Your neural network architecture is responding to a data overflow in the pattern recognition module. May I?" Camille's shock made her unconsciously hold her breath. This was the man who had publicly humiliated her, who had called her innovations unproven science that could cost lives. Yet he was offering help with a technical precision that suggested he knew her system far better than any critic should. "I don't need," she began, but another cascade of error messages flooded the screen. "Your company's worth $9.4 billion because your technology saves lives," Adrian continued, now climbing the stage steps. "Let's prove that together." The auditorium held its collective breath. Camille stared at this man who had nearly destroyed her career, who was now extending his hand toward her diagnostic controls. His surgeon's fingers were steady, confident, the same hands that had once gestured dismissively while attacking her credibility. "Why?" she whispered, loud enough only for him to hear. "Because I was wrong," he said simply, "and because 47 people are alive today thanks to your technology." Camille's world tilted. 47? How could he possibly know that number, unless he'd been using her system secretly? The man who had publicly condemned CardioPredict had been testing it privately. Against every instinct screaming caution, Camille stepped aside. Adrian's fingers moved across her interface with surprising familiarity, his movements precise and knowing. He wasn't guessing. He understood her architecture, her algorithms, her revolutionary approach to cardiac prediction. "Here," he murmured, their shoulders brushing as he reached across her to adjust the neural network parameters. "Your machine learning model is encountering bias in the training data. If we recalibrate the baseline metrics..." Camille found herself leaning closer, watching his hands work with practiced efficiency. His cologne carried hints of cedar and something clean. Medical soap, perhaps, distinctly masculine, yet oddly comforting. When their fingers accidentally touched over the diagnostic display, an unexpected warmth shot through her arm. "There," Adrian said softly. "Try your demonstration now." Camille initiated the sequence, her heart hammering as the system processed the sample cardiac data. The screen flickered once, twice, then blazed to life with perfect diagnostic clarity. CardioPredict identified 3 critical abnormalities in the test patient's cardiac rhythm, displayed comprehensive treatment recommendations, and projected outcome probabilities with stunning accuracy. The auditorium erupted in applause. Dr. Richard Chen, her mentor from Columbia, stood and began clapping enthusiastically. Other physicians joined in. Their earlier skepticism transformed into genuine admiration for the flawless demonstration, but Camille barely heard the applause. She was staring at Adrian Sinclair, this man who had destroyed her public reputation, then privately learned her technology well enough to save her company in front of 300 witnesses. "How long?" she asked quietly, as the crowd's enthusiasm continued around them. 4 months, Adrian admitted, his gray eyes meeting hers directly. "Since the Rodriguez case, 12-year-old girl with undiagnosed cardiomyopathy. Your system caught what 3 experienced cardiologists missed. 4 months. For 4 months, while she'd been fighting to rebuild her reputation, he'd been secretly using and apparently perfecting his understanding of the technology he'd publicly condemned. Dr. Edmond, that was magnificent." Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Boston General approached the stage, her eyes bright with excitement. "I want to discuss implementation at our cardiac center immediately." More physicians pressed forward, business cards and integration requests flowing like water. Camille accepted their congratulations with professional grace, but her attention kept drifting to Adrian, who had quietly retreated to the stage's edge. "My dear Royal Story family, I'm curious. Have you ever had to work with someone who hurt you? What would you do if they suddenly appeared to help when you needed it most?" As the immediate rush of interested physicians began to thin, Camille noticed Dr. Marcus Webb approaching from the back of the auditorium. The rival cardiologist's expression was thunderous, his jaw set in a way that promised confrontation. Webb had always been competitive, but something in his posture suggested today's events had escalated beyond professional rivalry. "Adrian," Webb's voice carried a sharp edge as he reached the stage area. "I see you're still making questionable professional choices." Adrian straightened, his body language shifting subtly protective as Webb's glare moved from him to Camille. In that moment, she realized that whatever had motivated Adrian's public criticism 6 months ago, whatever was driving his unexpected assistance today, the simple act of Dr. Marcus Webb approaching with obvious hostility meant her troubles were far from over. The tension in the air grew thick as Dr. Marcus Webb stepped closer to the stage, his pale blue eyes fixed on Adrian with unmistakable hostility. Webb's reputation in the cardiac community was formidable. Chief of Cardiology at Sinai Medical Center, published researcher, and Adrian's former colleague before their professional paths had diverged years ago. "Marcus," Adrian acknowledged coolly, positioning himself slightly between Webb and Camille. The protective gesture was subtle but unmistakable. "Interesting demonstration," Webb continued, his tone carrying false pleasantry that fooled no one. "Though I have to wonder about the wisdom of endorsing technology that hasn't undergone proper peer review, especially given your previous position on Dr. Edmond's work." Camille felt her jaw tighten. Webb's implication was clear. Adrian's sudden support was professionally inconsistent, possibly even compromised. The last thing she needed was speculation about why a respected cardiologist had reversed his position so dramatically. "The peer review process doesn't save lives, Marcus," Adrian replied evenly. "Results do, and CardioPredict's results speak for themselves." "Do they?" Webb's smile was razor-sharp. "Because I've been reviewing some interesting data about diagnostic accuracy rates. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Adrian, I'd hate for Dr. Edmond to be subjected to anything." Unpleasant revelations about the reliability of her system. Camille stepped forward, her French Caribbean heritage evident in the way she lifted her chin with regal defiance. A gesture her grandmother Grace had taught her never to suppress, no matter how elite the company. "Dr. Webb," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built a $9.4 billion company from nothing. If you have concerns about CardioPredict's efficacy, I welcome a transparent discussion. My technology has been validated through 3 years of clinical trials and real-world implementation. Webb's eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. Has it? Because some of the data I've seen suggests significant discrepancies between claimed results and actual patient outcomes. But perhaps that's a conversation for another time. He turned to leave, then paused as if remembering something. Oh, and Adrian? Dr. Harrison at Manhattan Presbyterian was asking about your research sabbatical plans. Something about Harvard Medical School's offer. I told him you were probably too committed to current projects to consider such opportunities. The threat was barely veiled. Webb was implying that Adrian's support for Camille could cost him career advancement, specifically what sounded like a department head position at Harvard Medical School. After Webb disappeared into the crowd, an uncomfortable silence settled between Camille and Adrian. The euphoria of the successful demonstration had evaporated, replaced by the complex reality of their situation. Harvard Medical School? Camille asked quietly. Adrian's expression remained carefully neutral. It's not important. A department head position at Harvard isn't important? Camille studied his face, noting the slight tension around his eyes. Dr. Sinclair, I may work in technology, but I understand academic politics. What exactly are you risking by being here? Before Adrian could answer, Dr. Richard Chen approached, his weathered face beaming with pride. At 65, Chen remained one of Columbia's most respected professors emeritus, and his opinion carried significant weight in both academic and medical circles. Camille, my dear. Chen embraced her warmly, switching briefly to French as he always did when particularly pleased. Magnifique. That demonstration was precisely what this industry needed to see. His keen eyes shifted to Adrian, and Camille caught a flicker of something, calculation perhaps, or assessment. Dr. Sinclair, Chen continued in English. An impressive intervention. Though I confess surprise at your evolution regarding CardioPredict's capabilities. Adrian met the older man's gaze steadily. Sometimes new evidence requires us to reconsider our positions, Professor Chen. Indeed, Chen replied thoughtfully. New evidence can be quite illuminating. I trust your future presentations will reflect these updated perspectives. The weight of Chen's words was unmistakable. He was asking whether Adrian would continue supporting Camille publicly, or if today's assistance was merely damage control for whatever guilt he might be feeling. My future presentations will reflect the truth, Adrian said firmly. CardioPredict technology represents a revolutionary advancement in cardiac care. Chen nodded approvingly. Then turned back to Camille. I've been fielding calls all morning about implementation partnerships. Boston General, Mayo Clinic, even that new cardiac center in Dubai. Your technology is finally receiving the recognition it deserves. As Chen moved away to speak with other colleagues, Camille found herself alone with Adrian again. The conference attendees were beginning to disperse, heading to breakout sessions or networking lunches, but neither of them seemed inclined to leave. 6 months ago, Camille said quietly, you stood in front of 400 physicians and called my work dangerous amateur hour. You said it was unproven science that could cost lives. The medical journals picked up your critique. My IPO nearly failed. I lost 3 major hospital contracts. Adrian's face showed genuine pain. I know. Do you? Camille's voice carried years of frustration. Do you know that I had to lay off 37 employees? That I mortgaged my home in Harlem? The house my grandmother left me to keep the company afloat? That my sons asked me why people were saying mean things about mommy on the internet? Your sons? Adrian's expression shifted, surprise evident. Triplets. Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin. They're 14, certified geniuses studying at Columbia's accelerated program. They understand enough about cardiac medicine to know when someone with your reputation attacks their mother's work. Camille's voice softened slightly. They also understand enough to ask why I was crying at the kitchen table after your AHA presentation. The weight of Adrian's impact hit visibly across his features. Whatever had motivated his initial criticism, He clearly hadn't considered the personal devastation beyond the professional realm. "I had no idea about your family situation," he said quietly. "That doesn't excuse my actions, but I want you to know that hurting you, personally, was never my intention." "Then what was?" Camille challenged. "What was your intention when you publicly destroyed someone's life's work without apparently bothering to test it yourself first?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his surgeon's hands clasped behind his back, as he stared at the now empty presentation screen. "Fear," he admitted finally, "and grief, and professional arrogance masked as medical caution." Before Camille could respond, he continued, "My wife Sarah died 5 years ago from an undiagnosed cardiac condition. Rare form of cardiomyopathy that presented atypically. By the time we caught it, surgical intervention was impossible." His voice carried old pain. "I've spent 5 years believing that if I'd been better, smarter, more intuitive, I could have saved her." Understanding began to dawn. And then my technology appeared, claiming it could diagnose conditions that human physicians miss. "Revolutionary AI that promised to catch what I couldn't," Adrian confirmed. It felt like an indictment of everything I'd failed to do for Sarah. "So when Marcus Webb approached me with concerns about your clinical trial data, with questions about accuracy rates and false positives, you wanted to believe him," Camille finished, "because if my technology wasn't reliable, it meant your failure wasn't about missing something a machine could catch." "Exactly." Adrian's honesty was painful in its clarity. "Webb presented what seemed like legitimate concerns about your validation process. He showed me preliminary data suggesting CardioPredict might miss certain arrhythmia patterns. In my grief and wounded pride, I didn't investigate thoroughly. I took his word and used my reputation to amplify his criticisms." Camille felt a complex mixture of anger and understanding. Adrian's actions had been devastating, but his motivations were heartbreakingly human. A widowed doctor struggling with guilt over his inability to save the woman he loved. "The Rodriguez case," she said. "The 12-year-old you mentioned. What happened?" Adrian's expression brightened slightly. "Emma Rodriguez came to our emergency department with chest pains her parents thought were anxiety-related. Standard EKG looked normal, blood work unremarkable. But I'd been quietly testing their system for 2 weeks by then, entering patient data to see how CardioPredict's algorithms compared to our diagnoses. And your system flagged her immediately. Detected subtle patterns in her cardiac rhythm that suggested early-stage cardiomyopathy, the same condition that killed Sarah, but caught early enough for intervention." Adrian's voice grew stronger. "We ran additional tests based on CardioPredict's recommendations, confirmed the diagnosis, started treatment immediately." "How is she now?" "Thriving. Full cardiac function restored. She'll need monitoring, but CardioPredict caught her condition months before traditional diagnostics would have detected anything." Adrian met Camille's eyes. "That was the moment I realized what I'd done. Not just to you professionally, but to every patient who could benefit from your technology." The weight of their conversation settled between them. Camille studied Adrian's face, noting the genuine remorse, the professional integrity that had eventually overcome his personal bias, the courage it must have taken to admit error so publicly. 47 patients, she said. 47 patients, he confirmed. In 4 months of quiet testing, cardiac conditions caught early, treatment initiated faster, outcomes improved significantly. I documented every case, every success, every life improved because of your innovation. Why didn't you contact me privately? Why the public intervention today?" Adrian smiled ruefully. "Because private apologies don't restore public reputations. Because the medical community needed to see that I was wrong as publicly as I'd been when I criticized you. And because—" He hesitated, then continued. "Because watching you fight for your technology's recognition while knowing I'd been the one to damage its reputation was keeping me awake at night." Before Camille could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted to maternal concern. "My sons," she explained. "They're at Columbia for advanced biochemistry. Malcolm's asking if the presentation went well." She typed a quick response, then looked back at Adrian. they've been worried about today, about whether their mother would be able to prove herself again. What will you tell them? Camille considered the question, looking at this man who had wounded her so deeply, yet ultimately proved capable of growth and redemption. I'll tell them that sometimes people make mistakes based on their own pain, she said slowly, and that sometimes those same people find the courage to make things right. Adrian's expression showed profound relief mixed with something deeper, gratitude, perhaps, or the beginning of hope. There's something else, Camille continued. Webb's threats about your Harvard position. Are you really risking your career advancement by supporting my technology? Dr. Edmond, Camille, Adrian said, using her first name for the first time. If supporting life-saving medical innovation costs me career advancement, then I've been pursuing the wrong career. The simple honesty of his statement, combined with the way her name sounded in his voice, created an unexpected flutter in Camille's chest. She pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the professional implications. But you should know that Webb isn't finished. His threats today suggest he has some kind of agenda beyond simple professional disagreement. I know, Adrian replied grimly. Marcus Webb has never been content with second place. If your technology succeeds, it overshadows his own diagnostic research. He'll try to undermine you again. Then we'll be ready for him, Camille said. Surprised by her own use of we, Adrian caught it too, his gray eyes showing a flicker of something warm. We? Before Camille could clarify her slip, a familiar voice called her name from across the nearly empty auditorium. Camille, there you are. She turned to see Preston Hastings approaching, his tall frame impeccably dressed in a custom charcoal suit, his practiced smile radiating the kind of confidence that only came from inherited wealth. Camille's stomach dropped. Preston, her ex-boyfriend from 15 years ago, the father she'd never told about her triplets, the man who'd rejected her as insufficient for a Hastings when she'd been young, pregnant, and desperately in love. Hello, Camille, Preston continued, his blue eyes taking in her successful presentation setup, her elegant professional attire, the clear evidence of her remarkable achievements. I heard you could use a friend. 3 weeks later, Adrian Sinclair sat in his office at Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital, staring at a file that had consumed his thoughts for months. The folder contained 47 detailed case studies, each one a life saved or significantly improved by Camille Edmond's CardioPredict technology. 47 patients whose diagnoses had been accelerated, whose treatments had been optimized, whose outcomes had exceeded all traditional medical predictions. The Emma Rodriguez case lay on top, a 12-year-old girl whose early-stage cardiomyopathy had been caught just in time. Without CardioPredict's intervention, she would have suffered the same fate as Sarah, diagnosed too late for effective treatment. Adrian's hands trembled slightly as he closed the file. For 4 months, he'd been documenting proof of Camille's genius, while the medical community still questioned her credibility because of his devastating critique. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter Emma. Dad, you've been staring at medical files for 3 hours. Mom wouldn't want you to torture yourself. Even at 16, Emma possessed an emotional intelligence that reminded him daily of Sarah's compassionate nature. Adrian typed back, not torturing myself, sweetheart, trying to fix something I broke. Emma's response came immediately. The heart doctor lady? Ask her for coffee. That's what Mom would have done. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. Sarah had always believed in direct action when it came to healing relationships. Perhaps it was time to follow her advice. An hour later, Adrian found himself standing outside Edmond Technologies headquarters in Manhattan's financial district. The sleek 40-story building rose like a glass monument to innovation, its facade reflecting the afternoon sun in brilliant patterns. He'd called ahead, unsure if Camille would even agree to see him, but her assistant had confirmed a brief meeting. The elevator ride to the 38th floor felt endless. When the doors opened, Adrian stepped into a reception area that seamlessly blended cutting-edge technology with warm, sophisticated design. Rich mahogany accents, perhaps a nod to Camille's heritage, complemented state-of-the-art displays showcasing CardioPredict's life-saving capabilities. Dr. Sinclair, a woman in her late 30s, approached, her Harvard MBA confidence evident in every step. I'm Lola Drummond, CFO and Dr. Edmond's business partner. She's finishing a call with investors in Geneva. Lola's expression was politely professional, but Adrian caught the protective edge in her voice. This was someone who'd witnessed Camille's devastation after his AHA conference attack, and wasn't inclined toward forgiveness. I appreciate her making time, Adrian said carefully. She almost didn't. Lola replied bluntly. After what you did to our IPO, most people in her position wouldn't take your call. But Camille believes in second chances, even when they're undeserved. Before Adrian could respond, Camille emerged from her office, and Adrian's breath caught. She wore a navy silk dress that emphasized her natural elegance. Her hair styled in soft curls that framed her face beautifully. But it was her confidence that struck him most. The way she carried herself with the authority of someone who'd built an empire from brilliant innovation. Dr. Sinclair, she acknowledged, extending her hand for a professional handshake. When their skin made contact, Adrian felt an unexpected warmth that had nothing to do with professional courtesy. Thank you for seeing me, he said, reluctantly releasing her hand. I have something I need to show you. Camille led him into her office, a space that reflected both her French-Caribbean heritage and her technological expertise. Bird of paradise flowers, vibrant orange and blue blooms, adorned a corner table, while multiple monitors displayed real-time cardio-predict implementations across various hospitals. Impressive setup, Adrian observed genuinely. My sons helped design the interface layouts, Camille said with unmistakable maternal pride. They understand user experience better than most adults. Adrian opened his briefcase and withdrew the thick file of case studies. I wanted you to see this. 47 patients over 4 months. Each case represents a life saved or significantly improved by cardio-predict technology. Camille's eyebrows rose as she accepted the file. You've been documenting your usage? Obsessively, Adrian admitted. Every diagnosis accelerated, every treatment optimized, every outcome exceeded. I needed to understand exactly what I'd tried to destroy. She opened the file, her expression growing more amazed with each page. The documentation was meticulous. Patient presentations, cardio-predict recommendations, traditional diagnostic timelines, comparative outcomes. It was the work of someone determined to understand and validate every aspect of her innovation. This is comprehensive, she said softly, stopping at the Rodriguez case. You've included parental consent for research documentation, outcome tracking, follow-up protocols. This represents months of work. 4 months of sleepless nights, Adrian confirmed. 4 months of realizing that my grief over Sarah's death had blinded me to the very technology that could have saved her. Camille looked up from the files, her expression thoughtful. You really believe CardioPredict could have helped Sarah? I know it could have, Adrian said firmly. Her cardiomyopathy presented with subtle rhythm irregularities that we attributed to anxiety. Your algorithm would have flagged those patterns immediately, recommended the specific tests that would have confirmed the diagnosis months earlier. They sat in comfortable silence as Camille continued reviewing his documentation. Adrian found himself studying her face as she read, noting the way her eyes lit up when she encountered particularly successful outcomes, the soft smile that appeared when she read about children whose lives had been saved. The Patel case, she said suddenly. 67-year-old with atypical presentation. CardioPredict flagged him for immediate intervention? Traditional workup suggested acid reflux, Adrian replied. But your system detected micro-variations in his cardiac rhythm that indicated impending myocardial infarction. We got him into surgery 3 hours before what would have been a massive heart attack. And he's fully recovered? Returned to his job as a high school math teacher last month. His students threw him a welcome back Mr. Patel party that made the local news. Camille's smile was radiant. This was why she dedicated her life to medical technology, not for profit or recognition, but for moments like these. Teachers returning to classrooms, children growing up healthy, families staying whole. There's something else, Adrian continued, producing a second, smaller folder. I've been asked to present at the International Cardiac Innovation Conference next month. The keynote address on emerging diagnostic technologies. That's a significant honor, Camille acknowledged. The ICIC keynote reaches thousands of physicians worldwide. I want to use that platform to present your technology properly. to show the medical community what CardioPredict really represents. Adrian met her eyes directly. With your permission, I'd like to base my entire presentation on these 47 cases. Public validation from someone who initially opposed your work. Camille stared at him, processing the magnitude of what he was offering. The ICIC keynote would reach every major cardiac center in the world. Adrian's endorsement, backed by documented evidence, could revolutionize her technology's acceptance overnight. Why? She asked quietly. This presentation could accelerate your Harvard opportunity. Why risk controversial support for technology you once condemned? Because 47 families have intact hearts, because of your brilliance, Adrian replied simply. Because Emma Rodriguez is alive, because of your innovation. Because the medical community deserves the truth, not the professional jealousy and personal grief that motivated my initial criticism. Before Camille could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously with emergency alerts. Adrian glanced at his screen and immediately stood. Mass casualty incident at Manhattan Presbyterian, he said grimly. Multi-vehicle accident, multiple cardiac trauma cases incoming. Camille was already moving toward her computer. I can provide remote CardioPredict analysis for rapid triage, real-time cardiac assessment for multiple patients simultaneously. You'd do that? Those are my neighbors, my community, she replied, her fingers flying across the interface. CardioPredict was designed for exactly these situations. 20 minutes later, they were working side by side in Manhattan Presbyterian's emergency department, their earlier conversation forgotten in the urgency of saving lives. Camille had connected her mobile CardioPredict unit to the hospital systems, providing instant cardiac analysis for incoming patients, while Adrian coordinated surgical interventions. Patient 7, Bay 4, Camille called out, her eyes fixed on cardiac rhythm patterns flowing across her screen. Subtle ST elevation that traditional monitoring missed. Recommend immediate catheterization. Adrian moved swiftly to Bay 4, examined the patient, and confirmed Camille's assessment. Within minutes, the patient was being prepped for emergency surgery that would save his life. Patient 12, Bay 9, she continued. Rhythm irregularities suggest internal bleeding affecting cardiac function, possible splenic rupture. Again, Adrian's examination confirmed her diagnosis. The seamless collaboration between them was remarkable, her technology providing rapid, accurate assessments, while his surgical expertise translated those insights into life-saving interventions. For 3 hours, they worked together with the efficiency of partners who'd collaborated for years. Camille's CardioPredict system helped triage 17 patients, identifying critical cases that might otherwise have been missed in the chaos of mass casualty treatment. Adrian coordinated surgical responses, his trust in her technology now absolute and publicly demonstrated. As the emergency situation stabilized, Adrian found Camille in the break room, exhaustion evident in her posture, but satisfaction glowing in her expression. 17 patients, he said, sitting beside her. Faster nor accurate cardiac assessment than we've ever achieved during mass casualty events. Your surgical team was incredible, she replied. The way they trusted CardioPredict's recommendations, acted on the data without hesitation, that's what makes the technology effective. Their shoulders were touching on the small break room couch. And Adrian became acutely aware of Camille's presence, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when thinking, the slight accent that emerged when she was tired, the competence and grace she'd shown under pressure. Camille, he said softly, using her first name naturally now. What happened tonight, the way we worked together, was professional collaboration, she finished. But her voice lacked conviction. Was it? Adrian turned to face her fully. Because watching you save lives tonight, seeing your technology in action, understanding the brilliant mind behind those innovations. His phone rang, interrupting the moment. Adrian glanced at the screen. Emma Sinclair, my daughter, he explained apologetically, answering the call. Emma, is everything okay? Dad, I saw the news about the accident. Are you all right? I'm fine, sweetheart. We helped save a lot of lives tonight. We? Emma's perceptive question made Adrian glance at Camille, who was pretending not to listen. Dr. Edmond and I collaborated on emergency triage. Her technology was invaluable. The heart doctor lady? Dad, that's amazing. I want to meet her. Emma. Invite her for dinner Sunday. I'm making Mom's lasagna recipe. Adrian felt his chest tighten at the mention of Sarah's recipe. but also something warmer. Hope, perhaps, that his daughter was ready to welcome new people into their family circle. "I'll ask," he promised. After ending the call, Adrian found Camille watching him with gentle curiosity. "Your daughter sounds lovely," she said. "She wants to meet you. Dinner Sunday, apparently featuring her mother's lasagna recipe." Adrian hesitated. "She's never made that particular request about anyone before." "That's significant," Camille acknowledged. "Sarah's recipes are sacred in our house. Emma only makes them for special occasions or special people." Adrian met her eyes. "I think she recognizes that you're both." Before Camille could respond, her own phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at the screen and smiled. "My sons," she explained. "They're asking if I'm coming home soon because they have something to show me." Marcus apparently solved the protein folding problem that's been frustrating his biochemistry professor. 14 years old and solving graduate-level biochemistry problems? All three of them are exceptionally gifted. Malcolm's currently developing an app to optimize hospital resource allocation. And Martin's writing a paper on cardiac rhythm analysis that would probably make your colleagues weep with envy. Adrian shook his head in amazement. Brilliant mother, genius sons. The Edmond family is reshaping medicine one innovation at a time. Something in his tone, admiration mixed with genuine affection, made Camille's heart skip. She'd spent years protecting herself and her sons from people who might judge them, who might see her success as threatening or her family as unusual. Adrian's appreciation felt genuine, untainted by the competitive jealousy she'd experienced from other medical professionals. About Emma's dinner invitation, she said carefully, "I should probably mention that my sons come as a package deal. If I accept social invitations, they're usually included." "Emma would love that," Adrian replied immediately. "She's been the only young person in our house for 5 years. Having 3 brilliant brothers to debate with sounds like her idea of paradise." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the professional boundaries that had defined their interaction dissolved. Adrian saw not just the CEO of a revolutionary technology company, but a remarkable woman who'd built an empire while raising 3 exceptional children. Camille saw not just the renowned surgeon who'd once attacked her work, but a devoted father still healing from loss while finding the courage to embrace new possibilities. "Dr. Edmond, Dr. Sinclair?" A nurse appeared in the break room doorway. "The family and Bay 7 wanted to thank you both personally. The patient you diagnosed with the splenic rupture, he's out of surgery and expected to make a full recovery." As they walked back toward the emergency department, Camille felt something shifting between them. Tonight had shown her Adrian's true character, his dedication to patients, his willingness to trust her technology completely, his genuine remorse for past mistakes. Most importantly, it had shown her that some people were capable of real change. Outside the hospital, as they waited for their respective cars, Adrian turned to her one final time. "The ICIC presentation," he said. "May I use your 47 cases to show the world what CardioPredict really represents?" Camille considered the magnitude of what he was offering: professional redemption, global credibility, the kind of medical community support that could transform her company's future. "Yes," she said simply, "use them all." As her driver arrived, Camille paused before getting into the car. "Adrian? Sunday dinner sounds lovely. My sons and I will be there." She was halfway home before she realized she'd called him Adrian instead of Dr. Sinclair, and that the warmth spreading through her chest had nothing to do with professional vindication and everything to do with the way he'd looked at her when she'd agreed to dinner, like someone who'd been given an unexpected gift. But as her phone buzzed with another text from Preston, requesting a private meeting to discuss matters of mutual importance, Camille realized that her growing feelings for Adrian might be the least complicated aspect of her rapidly changing world. The International Cardiac Innovation Conference's main auditorium could seat 2,000 physicians, but demand for Adrian Sinclair's keynote presentation had exceeded expectations. Video links connected medical centers across 6 continents, making this potentially the largest audience ever assembled for a cardiac technology presentation. Camille sat in the 3rd row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as she watched Adrian approach the podium. 2 days had passed since their dinner at Adrian's home, an evening that had transformed from careful professional courtesy into something far more personal. Emma Sinclair had charmed Camille's triplets with her biomedical engineering projects, while Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin had engaged Emma in debates about cardiac rhythm analysis that left Adrian marveling at their intellectual sophistication. What should have been an awkward introduction between grieving widower and cautious single mother had evolved into genuine family connection. Now, watching Adrian adjust the microphone before an international audience of his peers, Camille felt her heart hammering with nervous anticipation. This presentation could restore her technology's reputation globally, or, if something went wrong, confirm the doubts that still lingered from his original devastating critique. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian began, his voice carrying clearly throughout the vast auditorium. "6 months ago, I made one of the most significant professional errors of my career. I publicly condemned a revolutionary diagnostic technology based on incomplete information, personal grief, and professional arrogance. Today, I'm here to present the evidence that proves Dr. Camille Edmonds' CardioPredict system represents the most important advancement in cardiac care since the invention of the artificial pacemaker." The auditorium fell silent. Adrian's reputation for measured, conservative medical positions was legendary. This level of public self-correction was unprecedented. "The data I'm about to share documents 47 patients whose lives were saved or significantly improved through CardioPredict technology over a 4-month period of intensive testing. These cases represent not just statistical validation, but human stories of families kept whole, children growing up healthy, and medical possibilities I once thought impossible." Adrian's first slide appeared. Emma Rodriguez, smiling in her school photo. Emma Rodriguez, age 12, presented to our emergency department with chest pains attributed to anxiety. Standard diagnostics showed no abnormalities. However, CardioPredict's advanced algorithm detected subtle rhythm irregularities suggesting early-stage cardiomyopathy. Subsequent testing confirmed the diagnosis. Today, Emma's cardiac function is fully restored. Camille felt tears prick her eyes as Adrian continued through case after case, each one documented with meticulous detail, each one representing a life saved by technology she developed through years of sleepless innovation. "Perhaps most significantly," Adrian continued, "CardioPredict diagnosed these conditions an average of 3.7 months earlier than traditional methods would have detected them. In cardiac medicine, early detection doesn't just improve outcomes, it transforms them completely." Dr. Richard Chen, sitting beside Camille, leaned over and whispered, "This is remarkable, my dear. He's presenting your work better than you could have done yourself." Adrian's presentation continued for 45 minutes, each slide building an overwhelming case for CardioPredict's efficacy. But it was his conclusion that left the audience speechless. "I stand before you today, not just as a physician who was wrong, but as a colleague who witnessed firsthand how personal loss can blind us to medical breakthrough. Dr. Camille Edmonds' CardioPredict technology doesn't just represent innovation, it represents hope. Hope for earlier diagnosis, hope for better outcomes, and hope that medicine can evolve beyond the limitations of individual human capability." He paused, his eyes finding Camille in the audience. "I destroyed something beautiful 6 months ago, through fear and professional jealousy. But Dr. Edmonds' grace in allowing me to witness her technology's true capabilities has taught me that the greatest medical breakthroughs come not from protecting our existing methods, but from embracing revolutionary change. CardioPredict isn't just the future of cardiac care, it's the present reality that every hospital system should implement immediately." The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Physicians throughout the auditorium rose to their feet, many wiping away tears, all clearly moved by both the technological presentation and Adrian's profound professional courage. As the applause finally subsided, Dr. Margaret Thornfield from the Mayo Clinic approached the microphone during the question period. "Dr. Sinclair, this presentation represents an extraordinary reversal of your previous position. What would you say to colleagues who might question the consistency of your professional judgment?" Adrian's answer was immediate and unflinching. "I would say that any physician who prioritizes consistency over patient outcomes has forgotten why we entered medicine. When presented with evidence that contradicts our previous positions, we have an obligation to evolve. My initial criticism of Dr. Edmonds' work was wrong. Dangerously, catastrophically wrong. Acknowledging that error publicly is the least I can do to repair the damage I caused to revolutionary life-saving technology. After the presentation, Camille was surrounded by physicians eager to discuss implementation partnerships. Boston General, the Cleveland Clinic, even representatives from the European Cardiac Society, pressed business cards into her hands, all requesting immediate consultations about CardioPredict integration. But her attention kept drifting to Adrian, who was fielding his own crowd of colleagues expressing amazement at his presentation. She caught fragments of their conversations: praise for his intellectual honesty, admiration for his willingness to admit error, speculation about how this would affect his Harvard Medical School opportunity. Dr. Edmond? A familiar voice made her turn. Dr. Marcus Webb stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Impressive presentation. Adrian certainly seems invested in your technology's success. Something in Webb's tone set off warning bells. Dr. Webb, I didn't expect to see you here. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, Webb replied smoothly. Though I have to wonder about the wisdom of basing career-defining presentations on such a limited data set. 47 cases over 4 months hardly constitutes comprehensive validation. Before Camille could respond, Adrian appeared at her side, his protective presence immediately shifting the dynamic. Marcus, Adrian acknowledged coolly, still questioning statistically significant data when it contradicts your own research interests? Webb's smile was razor-sharp. Just encouraging scientific rigor, Adrian. Though I suppose personal motivations can sometimes cloud professional judgment. His eyes moved meaningfully between Adrian and Camille. I trust your Harvard decision won't be similarly influenced by non-medical considerations. The threat was barely veiled. Webb was implying that Adrian's support for Camille was romantically motivated rather than scientifically based, and that such perceptions could damage his academic prospects. My professional decisions are based on patient outcomes and medical evidence, Adrian replied firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. After Webb departed with a cryptic smile, Camille felt unsettled despite the presentation's overwhelming success. Don't let him get to you, Adrian said quietly. Marcus has always been threatened by innovation he didn't develop himself. It's not just professional competition, is it? Camille observed. He seems personally invested in undermining your support for my technology. Marcus and I have complicated history, Adrian admitted. We were colleagues years ago before our paths diverged. Let's just say he's never handled professional disagreement gracefully. 3 hours later, after endless conversations with potential partners and media interviews, Camille finally escaped to her hotel suite. The luxury accommodations felt surreal after the intensity of the day. Adrian's triumphant presentation, the overwhelming response from the medical community, Webb's ominous warnings, and underlying it all, her growing feelings for the man who'd transformed from enemy to champion. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Adrian standing in the hallway, still wearing his presentation suit, but with his tie loosened and exhaustion evident in his posture. I wanted to make sure you were all right, he said. Today was overwhelming for everyone, but especially for you. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I was just processing everything. Adrian entered her suite, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Chicago skyline. The setting sun painted the buildings in shades of gold and amber, creating a romantic backdrop neither of them had anticipated. Your presentation was perfect, Camille said softly. The way you presented each case, the evidence you compiled, the personal courage it took to admit errors so publicly. It was extraordinary. It was the least I could do, Adrian replied, turning from the window to face her. 6 months ago, I nearly destroyed something revolutionary because of my own pain and fear. Today felt like finally doing the right thing. Thunder rumbled outside, and the first drops of an evening storm began pattering against the windows. The atmospheric change seemed to heighten the tension between them, making the luxurious hotel suite feel suddenly intimate. Adrian, Camille said carefully, Webb's implications about your motivations were completely accurate, Adrian interrupted, his honesty startling her. My support for CardioPredict began as scientific validation, but my feelings for you have grown far beyond professional admiration. The admission hung between them, like a bridge neither had expected to build. Camille stared at him, processing not just his words, but the way he was looking at her, with the kind of focused intensity she'd only seen him direct toward complex surgical procedures. I should go, Adrian said, recognizing the vulnerability in her expression. You've had an overwhelming day and I don't want to complicate. Don't go, Camille said quickly, surprising herself with the request. Please, I don't want to be alone right now. The storm outside intensified. Rain now streaming down the windows in sheets that created a cocoon of privacy around them. Adrian moved closer, his surgeon's hands reaching up to gently cup her face. Camille, he said softly. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. The contact was electric. Months of tension, professional conflict, and growing attraction, culminating in a moment of perfect connection. Adrian's arms encircled her, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened, both of them finally acknowledging feelings they'd been fighting. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, the storm outside mirroring the emotional turbulence within the room. This is complicated, Camille whispered, her forehead resting against his. Everything worthwhile is complicated, Adrian replied, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. The question is whether it's worth the complexity. Before she could answer, Camille's phone rang sharply, cutting through the intimate moment. She glanced at the screen. Marcus Edmund. Her son. I have to take this, she said apologetically, answering the call. Marcus, sweetheart, what's wrong? Mom, there's a man here who says he's our father. Marcus's voice was tight with confusion and protective anger. He's demanding to see you immediately, and he won't leave. Malcolm called build-in security, but he's claiming legal rights. Camille's blood ran cold. Preston, somehow Preston, had found her sons and was confronting them directly. I'm on the next flight home, she said firmly. Don't let him into the apartment. Don't give him any information and stay together until I arrive. Mom, who is this guy? Marcus pressed. He keeps saying he has rights to us, that he's going to take legal action. Martin's researching family law right now, but we're scared. I'll explain everything when I get there, Camille promised. Just remember that you three are my sons. You've always been my sons, and no one can change that. I love you. After ending the call, she turned to find Adrian watching her with deep concern. Preston, she explained grimly. My ex-boyfriend from 15 years ago, the man who rejected me when I was pregnant. Somehow he's found my sons and he's at my apartment making threats about legal rights. Your son's father, Adrian said, understanding immediately dawning. No, Camille corrected firmly. Their biological contributor. Their father is the man who raised them, taught them, protected them for 14 years. That's me. Adrian's expression hardened with protective fury. What can I do? I have to get home, Camille said, already moving toward her suitcase. My boys are brilliant, but they're still children. They shouldn't have to deal with this alone. I'm coming with you, Adrian said immediately. Adrian, you don't understand what you're signing up for. Preston Hastings isn't just some ex-boyfriend. He's heir to significant wealth, connected to powerful people. And if he's making legal threats, he has resources to make this complicated. Then you'll need someone in your corner who understands both medicine and law, Adrian replied, pulling out his phone. My brother-in-law is one of Manhattan's top family attorneys. If Preston wants a fight, we'll give him one. The word "we" hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Adrian was offering not just professional support, but personal partnership in fighting for her family's protection. Why? Camille asked quietly. Why would you involve yourself in this kind of complicated family drama? Adrian moved closer, taking her hands in his. Because those three brilliant boys matter to you, which means they matter to me. Because you've been protecting your family alone for 14 years, and you don't have to do that anymore. And because? He paused, gathering courage. Because I'm falling in love with you, Camille. And love means standing together against whatever threatens the people we cherish. Outside, lightning illuminated the Chicago skyline as the storm reached its peak intensity. Inside the hotel suite, Camille stared at Adrian's earnest face, processing his declaration of love amid the chaos of family crisis. "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted softly. "But Adrian, you need to understand what you're choosing. Preston isn't going to disappear quietly. If he's making legal claims, this could get messy, public, potentially damaging to your career." "Let me worry about my career," Adrian replied firmly. "Right now, the only thing that matters is getting you home to your sons and making sure Preston Hastings understands that your family is protected." As they prepared to leave for the airport, Camille felt something shifting fundamentally in her world. For 14 years, she'd faced every challenge alone, raising brilliant children, building a revolutionary company, fighting for professional recognition. Now, for the first time, she had someone willing to stand beside her against whatever storm was coming. But as her phone buzzed with another call from Marcus reporting that Preston was now accompanied by men in expensive suits who were taking pictures of our building and asking neighbors questions, Camille realized that Adrian's love, however genuine, might not be enough to protect them from the kind of wealth and power that Preston Hastings could deploy. The real battle for her family was just beginning. The confrontation at Camille's Harlem brownstone was everything she'd feared and worse. Preston Hastings stood in her living room like he owned it, his expensive suit and entitled posture a stark contrast to the warm, family-centered space she'd created for her sons. Behind him, two men in dark suits photographed everything. Family photos, the boys' academic awards, even their medical records scattered on the coffee table from a recent pediatric appointment. "Hello, Camille," Preston said smoothly, his blue eyes taking in her elegant travel attire with obvious appreciation. "You look well. Success suits you." Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin stood together near the kitchen, their identical expressions of protective anger making them look older than their 14 years. Adrian remained by the front door, his presence both comforting and potentially inflammatory. Preston's lawyers would undoubtedly use a romantic relationship against her in any custody proceeding. "Preston," Camille replied coolly, "you have 30 seconds to explain what you're doing in my home before I call the police." "Our home," Preston corrected with a predatory smile. "Or rather, the home where you've been raising my sons without my knowledge or consent for 14 years. "Your sons?" Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying the same intellectual precision that made him academically gifted. "We've researched New York family law, Mr. Hastings. Biological contribution doesn't automatically establish paternal rights, especially when there's been no contact or support for 14 years. Preston's expression flickered with surprise. He clearly hadn't expected to be challenged by a teenager versed in legal precedent. "Smart boy," Preston acknowledged. "You get that from me, obviously, though I suspect your mother never told you that she chose to cut me out of your lives, not the other way around." "That's enough," Camille said firmly, moving protectively toward her sons. "Whatever revisionist history you're selling, Preston, my sons know the truth about who raised them, protected them, and loved them. Do they know the truth about why you never told me I was a father?" Preston's voice carried false, wounded innocence. "Do they know you denied me the opportunity to be part of their lives?" Adrian stepped forward slightly, his surgeon's control evident in every measured movement. "Mr. Hastings, I think you should leave. This is obviously a private family matter." "And you are?" Preston's gaze assessed Adrian with obvious calculation. "Let me guess. The famous Dr. Sinclair, whose dramatic reversal regarding Camille's technology has been making headlines. How convenient that her strongest medical advocate also appears to be her romantic interest." The implication was clear. Preston intended to use Adrian's relationship with Camille to suggest her professional success was somehow romantically motivated, rather than merit-based. "I'm someone who recognizes harassment when I see it," Adrian replied evenly. "And someone who won't stand by while children are intimidated in their own home." "Children?" Preston laughed. "These are my heirs, Dr. Sinclair. Hastings' blood runs through their veins. They're entitled to inheritance. Legacy, opportunities their mother's modest background could never provide." "Modest background?" Malcolm spoke up, his voice sharp with indignation. "Our mother built a $9.4 billion company from nothing. She's revolutionizing cardiac medicine worldwide." What exactly have you accomplished lately, Mr. Hastings? Preston's facade slipped slightly. The truth was that Hastings' properties had been struggling financially for years, his inheritance slowly depleting through poor investments and expensive divorces. Camille's sons represented not just potential heirs, but potential access to her fortune. What I've accomplished, Preston said carefully, is maintaining a family legacy that spans 4 generations. Your mother may have built impressive technology, but she can't give you social position, political connections, or entry into circles that matter. The only circle that matters to us is our family, Martin added quietly, the one Mom created for us. Camille felt overwhelming pride in her son's maturity and loyalty, but also growing anxiety about Preston's obvious preparation. This wasn't a spontaneous visit. He had lawyers, investigators, a comprehensive strategy. Preston, she said firmly, you made your position clear 15 years ago. You called me insufficient for a Hastings, and made it obvious that pregnancy was my problem to solve alone. You don't get to rewrite that history now that it's convenient. I was young, ambitious, focused on career development, Preston replied smoothly. If I'd known you were carrying my children, specifically, children with this level of intellectual capacity, things would have been different. The casual way he reduced her sons to their intellectual value sent chills down Camille's spine. Preston wasn't interested in fatherhood. He was interested in assets. Get out, she said simply, now. I'm afraid that's not possible, Preston replied, nodding to one of his companions. The man stepped forward with official-looking documents. These are preliminary custody papers, Camille. Formal request for DNA testing and joint custody pending full paternity establishment. Adrian moved closer to Camille, his protective presence unmistakable. You need to serve those through proper legal channels, not by breaking into private homes. Breaking in? Preston's eyebrows rose. I was invited by concerned neighbors who thought the boys might be in danger. Single mother, frequently traveling for business, leaving brilliant children unsupervised. We're never unsupervised, Marcus interrupted angrily. We have Mrs. Chen next door, Aunt Lola checks on us daily, and our security system is inadequate for children of your potential value, Preston finished smoothly. Hastings' children require Hastings-level protection. The threat was barely veiled. Preston was suggesting that her sons were somehow at risk in her care, setting up arguments for custody modification based on their special needs as intellectually gifted children of wealthy families. Camille's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Lola. Webb called, wants an emergency meeting, says he has information about family complications affecting your business. Her blood ran cold. Webb and Preston working together. That was a nightmare scenario she hadn't anticipated. I need you to leave, Camille said firmly. Any further contact goes through attorneys. Of course, Preston agreed graciously. Though I should mention that certain medical colleagues of Dr. Sinclair have expressed concerns about the propriety of his romantic involvement with a business partner. Something about conflict of interest in medical endorsements. The threat to Adrian's career was explicit now. Preston was coordinating with Webb to attack both her family and Adrian's professional standing simultaneously. After Preston and his entourage finally left, Adrian immediately began making phone calls to his brother-in-law, while Camille gathered her shaken sons together. Mom, Marcus said quietly, he's not really our father, is he? I mean, biologically maybe, but biology doesn't make families, sweetheart, Camille said firmly. Love, commitment, sacrifice, being there every day, that's what makes families. Preston Hastings contributed genetic material 15 years ago. I chose to raise you 3 as my sons, and you chose to accept me as your mother. That's our family. But he could take us away? Martin asked, his usual quiet confidence shaken. Not while I'm breathing, Adrian said firmly, ending his call. My brother-in-law is the best family attorney in Manhattan. Preston can file all the papers he wants, but intimidating children and harassment won't look good to any judge. 2 days later, Webb's carefully orchestrated media campaign began. Headlines appeared simultaneously across medical journals and mainstream news. Romance or research? Questions raised about CardioPredict endorsements. Hastings heir seeks custody of medical prodigy children. Love triangle threatens medical innovation credibility. The coordinated nature of the attacks was obvious. Webb had been feeding information to Preston, while Preston's investigators had been feeding personal details to Webb. Together, they were creating a narrative that Camille's professional success was romantically motivated and that her family's stability was questionable. "We need to get away from this," Adrian said grimly, finding Camille in her office as she fielded the fifth reporter call of the morning. "Somewhere we can think clearly, plan our response, and let the immediate media frenzy die down." "I can't leave," Camille protested. "The boys have classes, I have investor meetings. The boys can study remotely for a few days, and your investors need to see you confident and in control, not harassed and reactive," Adrian countered. "I have a cabin upstate, private, secure, completely off the grid. We could take everyone there, let our lawyers handle the immediate legal responses, and figure out our long-term strategy. When enemies join forces against you, how far would you go to protect what matters most?" The question echoed in Camille's mind as she considered Adrian's offer. Running away felt like weakness, but staying to fight a coordinated media assault might play directly into Webb and Preston's hands. "A few days," she agreed finally. "But if this gets worse, it won't," Adrian promised, "because we're going to get ahead of this instead of just reacting." The cabin was everything Adrian had promised. A restored 19th-century log structure nestled in 50 acres of pristine Adirondack wilderness. No cell towers, no internet, no possibility of surprise visits from lawyers or reporters. The boys were delighted with the adventure, immediately exploring the property and setting up their laptops to continue their studies via satellite internet Adrian had installed for medical research. Emma had joined them, and within hours she and the triplets were engaged in complex discussions about cardiac bioengineering that left both Adrian and Camille amazed at their intellectual compatibility. "They're like a four-person think tank," Camille observed, watching from the cabin's wraparound porch as the teenagers debated optimal stent designs around the fire pit. "Emma hasn't been this animated since Sarah died," Adrian replied, settling beside her on the porch swing. "Having intellectual equals to challenge her has brought back her spark." The evening air was crisp with early autumn, and Adrian had built a fire in the outdoor pit that cast dancing shadows across the cleared meadow. For the first time in days, Camille felt her shoulders relax, the constant tension of fighting on multiple fronts finally easing. "This is beautiful," she said softly, gesturing toward the star-filled sky, unmarred by city lights. "How did you find this place?" "Sarah and I bought it early in our marriage," Adrian replied. "She wanted somewhere we could escape medicine completely, where patient emergencies couldn't reach us." His voice carried old sadness. "After she died, I couldn't bear to come here. Too many memories of planning the future we'd never have." "And now?" Adrian turned to look at her, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "Now it feels like a place where new memories could be made. Better memories." The intensity of his gaze made Camille's heart skip. Despite everything, the legal threats, the media attacks, the complex family dynamics, there was something building between them that felt inevitable and powerful. "Camille," Adrian said softly, reaching for her hand. "I know the timing is terrible, with everything we're fighting. But I need you to know that my feelings for you aren't complicated by the crisis. They're not about guilt over my initial criticism or professional admiration for your work. I'm falling in love with the woman who raised 3 extraordinary sons alone, who built an empire through pure brilliance, who faces every challenge with grace and determination." "Adrian," she began, but he continued. "I'm falling in love with the way you protect your family, the way you've forgiven me for nearly destroying something precious, the way you make me want to be better than I've ever been." His thumb traced across her knuckles. "I know I come with complicated history, a dead wife, a grieving daughter, professional responsibilities. But if you'll have me, I want to build something beautiful with you." The sincerity in his voice, combined with the romantic setting and the emotional intensity of their shared struggles, created a moment of perfect vulnerability. Camille looked at this man who transformed from enemy to champion to potential life partner, seeing in his eyes the same longing and hope she felt growing in her own heart. "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted softly. "With your integrity, your courage in admitting mistakes, the way you love Emma so completely, The way you've stood up for my family against threats to your own career." Adrian leaned closer, his free hand cupping her face gently. "Then let's stop fighting what's between us. Let's stop pretending this is just professional collaboration or convenient timing." When he kissed her this time, it was different from their first kiss in Chicago. This was slower, deeper, full of promise and commitment rather than just attraction and discovery. Camille felt herself melting into his embrace, her hands fisting in his sweater as months of tension and uncertainty dissolved into perfect connection. They might have stayed there all evening, lost in each other, but the sound of approaching footsteps made them break apart. Emma appeared on the porch, her expression carefully neutral. "The boys and I finished our STEC design project," she announced. "Marcus wants to show you the 3D modeling software he developed for cardiac applications." "We'll be right there," Adrian promised, his voice slightly rough from the interrupted kiss. After Emma disappeared back inside, Camille laughed softly. "Your daughter has excellent timing. My daughter has been hoping something like this would happen since the day I told her about you," Adrian corrected. "She's been asking when I was going to stop being sad about Mom and start being happy about Dr. Camille." Later that evening, after the children had settled into their respective bedrooms, the boys sharing the loft space, while Emma claimed the guest room, Adrian found Camille standing by the large stone fireplace in the main room. She'd changed into soft gray leggings and an oversized sweater that somehow managed to be both comfortable and elegant. "Penny for your thoughts," he said softly, moving to stand beside her. "Just processing everything," she replied. "2 weeks ago, I was fighting to rebuild my reputation after your conference attack. Now we're hiding from coordinated media assault by 2 different enemies, while our children bond over cardiac engineering. It's surreal." "Is it too much?" Adrian asked, genuine concern in his voice. "Because I can step back, reduce the pressure on you." "No," Camille said firmly, turning to face him. "Don't step back. Don't reduce anything. For the first time in 14 years, I don't feel like I'm fighting alone. Even with everything Webb and Preston are throwing at us, even with the media speculation and legal threats, having you beside me makes it all feel manageable." Adrian moved closer, his hand settling gently on her waist. The firelight cast warm shadows across her face, highlighting the strength and beauty that had first captured his attention at the medical conference. "Camille," he said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens with the legal fights, whatever Preston threatens or Webb suggests, my feelings for you aren't going to change. My commitment to your family isn't going to waver." "Even if it costs you the Harvard position?" she asked quietly. "Especially if it costs me the Harvard position," Adrian replied firmly, "because career advancement means nothing if I lose the woman I love in the process." The word love hung between them, no longer tentative or qualified, but stated as simple fact. Camille reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I love you too," she whispered. "More than I thought possible after Preston's rejection taught me to guard my heart. More than I thought smart given all the complications we're facing." "Then stop thinking and start feeling," Adrian murmured, lowering his head to capture her lips in a kiss that was deeper and more urgent than any they'd shared before. This time, there were no interruptions, no crisis calls, no external pressures, just the two of them discovering the profound connection that had been building through months of professional respect, personal growth, and shared challenges. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I want to be with you tonight," he said quietly. Completely, honestly, without holding back anything. "Yes," Camille replied without hesitation. "I want that too." Adrian took her hand and led her toward his bedroom, pausing only to bank the fire and ensure the children were settled for the night. The room was simple but elegant, dominated by a large stone fireplace and windows that looked out over the moonlit meadow. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, they came together with a tenderness that spoke of deep emotional connection rather than mere physical attraction. Adrian's surgeon's hands were gentle and reverent as he traced the curves of her body, while Camille discovered the strength and warmth beneath his careful professional exterior. "You're so beautiful," He whispered against her skin, his voice filled with wonder and appreciation. So strong, so brilliant, so perfect. Their lovemaking was a conversation without words. Years of loneliness and professional focus dissolved into complete emotional and physical surrender. Adrian worshipped every inch of her body with the same attention and precision he brought to life-saving surgery, while Camille opened herself completely to the vulnerability and trust she'd never allowed herself to experience. When they finally came together completely, it was with a sense of coming home. Two wounded hearts finding healing in perfect connection. Two brilliant minds discovering that love could enhance rather than complicate their individual strengths. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the afterglow, Camille traced patterns on Adrian's chest while he played with her hair. "I've never felt anything like that," she admitted softly. "Neither have I," Adrian replied honestly. "Even with Sarah, wonderful as our relationship was, this feels different, deeper, like finding something I didn't know I was missing." They might have stayed lost in post-intimacy conversation all night, but Adrian's phone began buzzing insistently on the nightstand. He ignored it at first, but when it continued, Camille nudged him gently. "Answer it," she said. "Emergency calls at this hour usually mean someone's life is at stake." Adrian checked the screen and frowned. "It's my brother-in-law. David doesn't call unless it's urgent legal business." He answered reluctantly, and Camille watched his expression grow increasingly grim as he listened. "When?" Adrian asked sharply. "How did they get access to sealed medical records?" A pause. "No, we'll be back tomorrow. Prepare for full legal response." After ending the call, Adrian turned to Camille with obvious reluctance to shatter their perfect evening. "Preston's filed formal custody papers based on allegations of medical neglect," he said grimly. "Somehow he's obtained the boys' medical records, and he's claiming that your travel schedule constitutes abandonment of children with special medical needs." "Special medical needs?" Camille sat up, confusion and anger evident. "The boys are perfectly healthy. He's claiming that their exceptional intelligence constitutes a medical condition requiring specialized supervision," Adrian explained, "and Webb has provided supporting documentation suggesting that exposure to experimental medical technology in your home laboratory creates health risks." The coordinated assault was more sophisticated than either of them had anticipated. Webb and Preston weren't just attacking her professional credibility. They were attacking her fitness as a mother, using twisted interpretations of her son's giftedness and her medical innovation work. "There's more," Adrian continued reluctantly. "Webb has also filed complaints with the medical board about my professional conduct, claiming that romantic involvement with a business partner constitutes conflict of interest in medical endorsements." As if summoned by their conversation, Camille's phone began ringing. The caller ID showed CNN medical correspondent. Their perfect evening of love and connection was about to become another battlefield in Webb and Preston's coordinated war against everything they'd built together. The emergency flight back to Manhattan felt endless. Adrian held Camille's hand as she fielded crisis calls from Lola, her legal team, and Columbia University's administration, all reporting escalating attacks from multiple directions. Webb's medical board complaint had triggered an automatic review of Adrian's professional conduct, while Preston's custody filing had somehow leaked to every major news outlet in the city. "Edmund Technology stock is down 18%, Lola reported grimly over speakerphone. "Investors are spooked by the family instability headlines. 3 hospital contracts have requested meetings to reassess implementation timelines." In the seat behind them, Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin worked quietly on their laptops, researching everything from family law precedents to medical board ethics rules. Emma sat across the aisle, her biomedical engineering textbooks spread around her as she compiled data about CardioPredict's safety record. At 16 and 14, B's children were mounting a more sophisticated defense strategy than most adult legal teams could manage. "Mom," Marcus said quietly, leaning forward, "we've been analyzing the timing of these attacks." Webb filed his medical board complaint exactly 47 minutes after Preston served the custody papers. The media leaks happened simultaneously across 6 different outlets. This isn't coincidental. They're working from a coordinated strategy. "Which means they have more planned," Adrian said grimly. "This is just the opening salvo." As if summoned by his words, Camille's phone rang with an unknown Washington, D.C. number. Dr. Edmond? This is Deputy Director Patricia Hawkins from the FDA's Medical Device Safety Division. We need to schedule an emergency review meeting regarding CardioPredict technology. We've received serious allegations about safety protocol violations and inadequate clinical trial documentation. Camille felt the blood drain from her face. An FDA investigation could shut down CardioPredict implementations nationwide while they conducted their review. A process that could take months or even years. What specific allegations? She asked carefully. Dr. Marcus Webb has provided documentation suggesting significant discrepancies between reported clinical trial data and actual patient outcomes. We've also received reports that CardioPredict technology is being used in off-label applications without proper safety monitoring. Adrian's jaw tightened. Webb had found a way to weaponize the FDA's regulatory authority against Camille's technology, using the very patient cases Adrian had documented as evidence of CardioPredict's success. Deputy Director Hawkins, Camille said firmly, I welcome a thorough FDA review. CardioPredict's safety record and clinical trial data are completely transparent and available for immediate examination. I'm sure they are, Dr. Edmond. However, given the serious nature of these allegations, we're implementing an immediate suspension of all new CardioPredict implementations pending our investigation. Existing installations may continue operating under enhanced monitoring protocols. The phone call ended, leaving the airplane cabin in stunned silence. An FDA suspension would devastate Edmond Technologies' expansion plans and validate every doubt Webb had ever raised about her technology. They can't do this, Emma said angrily. CardioPredict saves lives. Dad has documented 47 cases, which Webb is now claiming were improperly conducted experiments using patients as test subjects, Adrian said grimly. He's twisted my evidence of CardioPredict's success into allegations of unethical human experimentation. Malcolm looked up from his laptop, his expression troubled. There's something else. I've been monitoring financial markets, and someone's been short-selling Edmond Technologies stock for the past week. Massive positions that will pay off huge if the company value crashes. Preston, Camille realized. He's not just trying to get custody of you boys. He's trying to profit from destroying my company. The coordinated nature of the assault was becoming clear. Webb provided medical credibility for attacking CardioPredict's safety. Preston added personal drama with custody battles, and unknown financial backers were positioned to profit from Edmond Technologies' destruction. 2 hours later, they sat in the conference room of David Sinclair's Manhattan law firm, Adrian's brother-in-law and one of the city's most respected family attorneys. David's expression was grim as he reviewed the custody filing and supporting documentation. This is sophisticated, David admitted. Preston's legal team has constructed arguments about gifted children requiring specialized supervision that could resonate with family court judges. They're claiming that the boys' exceptional intelligence constitutes a form of special needs that requires constant, expert guidance. That's insane, Martin said quietly. We don't need constant supervision. We need intellectual stimulation and emotional support, which Mom provides perfectly. I know that, and any reasonable evaluation would confirm it, David replied. But Preston's lawyers are also arguing that Camille's frequent business travel and high-stress corporate lifestyle create instability for children who require consistent routines due to their cognitive differences. What cognitive differences? Camille demanded. My sons are brilliant, not disabled. That's exactly their argument, David explained. They're claiming that exceptional giftedness requires the same level of specialized care as learning disabilities or developmental delays. It's manipulative legal reasoning, but it could work if they get the right judge. Adrian leaned forward, his protective instincts evident. What about the harassment? Preston's people invaded Camille's home, intimidated the children, which they'll claim was necessary to assess the children's living situation due to legitimate paternal concerns, David interrupted. Preston's team has been very careful to operate within legal boundaries while maximizing psychological pressure. The conference room door opened, and Lola entered with an expression that promised more bad news. Webb's called a press conference for this afternoon, she reported. He's claiming to have explosive evidence about CardioPredict, safety issues, and what he's calling inappropriate romantic relationships affecting medical judgment. He's going fully public, Adrian realized. No more behind-the-scenes maneuvering. There's more, Lola continued reluctantly. Harvard Medical School has called an emergency meeting about your department head candidacy. Apparently, Webb's medical board complaint raises questions about professional judgment and conflict of interest that the university needs to address. Adrian felt his career opportunities crumbling in real time. But his primary concern remained Camille and her family. Let them have their meeting. My professional reputation will survive this. Will it? Camille asked quietly. Adrian, you're sacrificing everything for us. Your Harvard position, your medical board standing, potentially your entire career trajectory. I'm not sacrificing anything, Adrian interrupted firmly. I'm choosing what matters most. You, the boys, Emma, building something real together. That's worth more than any academic position. Marcus, who had been quietly observing the adult conversation, suddenly looked up from his laptop with excitement. I think I found something, he announced. Mom, remember the research collaboration you had with Dr. Webb 5 years ago? The cardiac rhythm analysis project that you abandoned when he wanted to take primary credit? What about it? Camille asked. I've been analyzing Webb's recent publications, and he's been using modified versions of your original algorithms without attribution. Look at this. Marcus turned his laptop screen toward them, displaying complex medical equations. These are your innovations from that abandoned project, but he's presenting them as his own research. Malcolm leaned over his brother's shoulder, his eyes widening. And he's been selling this technology to medical device companies, while simultaneously attacking your newer cardio-predict innovations. Intellectual property theft, David said immediately. If we can prove Webb has been stealing and profiting from Camille's research, it completely undermines his credibility for attacking her newer technology. It's more than theft, Martin added quietly. If Webb's been using Mom's old algorithms in commercial applications, and those applications have had any patient safety issues, he's been covering it up while accusing her of safety violations. Adrian felt hope stirring for the first time since the crisis began. Marcus, how quickly can you document this theft? Malcolm, can you trace the financial connections between Webb's research and his commercial partnerships? Give us 6 hours, the boys said in unison, already diving back into their laptops with renewed energy. Emma looked up from her own research. And I'll compile every patient success story from cardio-predict implementations. Real families. Real lives saved. Human stories that counter Webb's statistical manipulations. As the children worked with focused intensity, Camille felt overwhelming gratitude for their brilliance and loyalty, but she also felt the weight of everything Adrian was risking for her family. Adrian, she said quietly, we need to talk privately. They stepped into David's private office, and Camille immediately moved into Adrian's arms, needing his strength and warmth amid the chaos surrounding them. I'm scared, she admitted softly. Not for my company or my technology, for my boys. Preston could actually take them away from me. No, Adrian said firmly, his arms tightening around her. That's not going to happen. David's the best family attorney in the city. Your sons are brilliant advocates for themselves, and we have the truth on our side. But what if it's not enough? Camille's voice cracked slightly. What if the judge believes Preston's arguments about specialized care? What if they decide a single mother with a demanding career can't provide what my boys need? Adrian pulled back to look at her face, his gray eyes intense with determination. Then they'll have to explain why a loving mother who raised 3 extraordinary children alone isn't good enough, while an absent biological father who abandoned them suddenly qualifies as a better option. And your career? She asked. Adrian, I can't watch you destroy everything you've built for us. You're not watching me destroy anything, Adrian replied firmly. You're watching me choose love over ambition, family over individual success, the life I want over the life others expect me to want. Before Camille could respond, urgent knocking on the office door interrupted them. David entered with an expression of barely controlled excitement. We have a problem, he announced, but it might also be the solution we need. He handed Camille a legal document with official FBI letterhead. Preston's financial backers aren't just profiting from your company's potential collapse, David explained. They're part of a larger scheme to manipulate medical device markets through coordinated attacks on innovative technologies. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division has been investigating this group for months. How does that help us? Adrian asked. Because Preston just became a federal witness in a securities fraud investigation, David replied with a grim smile. His custody filing might be legal, but his financial motivations are about to become federal evidence. Family court judges tend to look unfavorably on parents whose interest in their children is connected to federal financial crimes. Camille felt a spark of hope, but also growing urgency. How long before this becomes public? Hours, maybe less, David replied, which means we need to move fast. Webb's press conference this afternoon will either destroy CardioPredict's reputation permanently or become the moment he publicly destroys his own credibility. Then we attend the press conference, Adrian said firmly. We bring the boys' research, Emma's patient success stories, and we let Webb hang himself with his own lies. Adrian, Camille protested, if this goes wrong, if Webb's manipulation works, then we'll face the consequences together, Adrian interrupted. But I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not letting fear of professional damage keep me from standing up for the woman I love and the technology that saves lives. The conference room door burst open and Marcus rushed in with his laptop, his eyes bright with excitement and righteous anger. We found it, he announced. Not just the intellectual property theft, we found the cover-up. Webb's been using Mom's algorithms in devices that have had safety problems, and he's been hiding the incidents while blaming other companies' technologies. How many incidents? David asked sharply. 17 adverse events over 2 years, Malcolm reported, joining his brother. All covered up, all attributed to user error or competing technologies, all while Webb publicly attacked similar innovations for safety concerns. And the financial connections? Adrian pressed. Webb's research lab has received $3.2 million from the same investment group that's been short-selling Mom's stock, Martin added quietly. He's literally been paid to attack CardioPredict while stealing her earlier innovations. The scope of Webb's deception was staggering. He hadn't just been professionally jealous. He'd been conducting a systematic campaign of theft, deception, and market manipulation, while positioning himself as a medical ethics authority. This changes everything, David said firmly. Webb's press conference this afternoon isn't going to destroy CardioPredict. It's going to expose the biggest medical fraud scandal in recent history. As they prepared for the confrontation that would determine everything, Camille's technology, Adrian's career, her son's future, and their chance at building a life together, Camille realized that sometimes the greatest battles were fought not with weapons or legal documents, but with truth, courage, and the unshakable strength that came from genuine love. The war for their future was about to reach its climax. The press conference at the Manhattan Medical Center was standing room only. Dr. Marcus Webb stood at the podium like a man certain of victory, his prepared remarks promising explosive revelations about medical fraud and romantic manipulation that threatens patient safety nationwide. Behind him, in large displays, showed complex medical data designed to overwhelm rather than inform. Camille sat in the third row beside Adrian, their hands clasped tightly as they watched their primary tormentor prepare to deliver what he clearly believed would be the final blow to her career and their relationship. The boys sat nearby with Emma, laptops ready, their compiled evidence organized into devastating counter-arguments that would expose Webb's deception. Ladies and gentlemen of the medical community, Webb began, his voice carrying false authority. I stand before you today to expose a dangerous conspiracy that threatens the integrity of cardiac care worldwide. Dr. Camille Edmonds' CardioPredict technology, endorsed by Dr. Adrian Sinclair through what I can only describe as professionally compromised judgment, represents not medical innovation but medical malpractice disguised as progress. The audience of medical professionals, journalists, and industry representatives listened intently as Webb launched into detailed attacks on CardioPredict's clinical trial methodology, safety protocols, and validation processes. His presentation was sophisticated, convincing, and completely fabricated. Furthermore, Webb continued, Dr. Sinclair's dramatic reversal from critic to advocate coincides suspiciously with the development of a romantic relationship with Dr. Egmond. This raises serious questions about whether medical endorsements are being influenced by personal considerations rather than patient welfare. Adrian felt Camille's hand tighten in his, but her expression remained professionally composed. They had agreed to let Webb finish his performance before revealing the truth that would destroy him. Most concerning, Webb pressed on, are the unreported adverse events associated with CardioPredict implementations. My investigation has uncovered 17 cases of diagnostic errors, delayed treatments, and compromised patient outcomes directly attributable to over-reliance on Dr. Edmond's unvalidated algorithms. In the audience, Marcus Edmond raised his hand politely. At 14, he looked like any precocious student asking an academic question, not like someone about to detonate Webb's entire presentation. Dr. Webb, Marcus said clearly, could you specify which diagnostic algorithms you're referencing? Because the cases you're describing sound remarkably similar to incidents involving the MedCore diagnostic system that uses algorithms originally developed by my mother 5 years ago. Webb's expression flickered with surprise, but he maintained his composure. Young man, I'm discussing Dr. Edmond's current CardioPredict technology, not historical research collaborations. Actually, Malcolm stood up beside his brother. We're discussing both. The adverse events you're attributing to CardioPredict actually occurred with medical devices that use stolen versions of our mother's earlier algorithms. Algorithms you appropriated without attribution and commercialized through MedCore Industries. The audience began murmuring as Webb's carefully constructed narrative started unraveling. Martin rose quietly, his laptop displaying financial transaction records. Dr. Webb, Martin said in his soft, precise voice. Could you explain why MedCore Industries has paid your research laboratory $3.2 million over 2 years while you've been publicly attacking competing diagnostic technologies? Webb's face flushed with anger and panic. These children are clearly coached to disrupt legitimate medical discourse. Are they? Adrian stood up, his surgeon's authority commanding immediate attention. Because I'd like to address your claims about my professionally compromised judgment and CardioPredict's safety record. Adrian moved toward the front of the room, his presence shifting the entire dynamic of the press conference. This was no longer Webb's show, it was about to become his public destruction. Dr. Webb, you claim that 17 adverse events are associated with CardioPredict technology. However, my documentation shows that CardioPredict has actually prevented 17 potential adverse events in those exact same cases. The diagnostic errors you're describing occurred with devices using algorithms stolen from Dr. Edmond's earlier research. Research you appropriated and commercialized without her knowledge. That's a serious accusation. Webb replied, but his voice lacked conviction. It's a provable fact, Emma Sinclair announced, rising from her seat with remarkable poise for a 16-year-old. I've compiled patient outcome data from every CardioPredict implementation nationwide. Would you like to see the actual results, Dr. Webb, or would you prefer to continue presenting fabricated statistics? The audience was now fully engaged, sensing that Webb's carefully orchestrated attack was collapsing in real time. Dr. Richard Chen stood up from the back of the room, his academic authority unmistakable. Dr. Webb, Chen said formally, I've been reviewing the allegations you've made against Dr. Edmond's research methodologies. However, I'm more interested in discussing your own research publications, specifically the algorithms you've claimed as original innovations in your last 4 papers. Webb's composure finally cracked completely. Professor Chen, I don't appreciate these coordinated attacks on my professional reputation. Coordinated attacks? Camille rose gracefully, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had built an empire through pure brilliance. Dr. Webb, you've spent 6 months conducting coordinated attacks on my technology, my professional reputation, and my family. You've stolen my intellectual property, covered up safety incidents involving your own devices, and manipulated financial markets for personal profit. The only thing being attacked here is the truth, and you're losing. The audience was now witnessing something unprecedented, a public exposure of medical fraud conducted by the victims themselves, with evidence so comprehensive that Webb's guilt was undeniable. Ladies and gentlemen, Camille continued, addressing the room with perfect professional grace, Dr. Webb. Webb called this press conference to destroy CardioPredict's reputation and my relationship with Dr. Sinclair. Instead, he's provided an opportunity to expose the biggest medical fraud scandal in recent memory. She nodded to Marcus, who activated a presentation displaying side-by-side algorithm comparisons that clearly showed Webb's theft of her original research. "These are my cardiac rhythm analysis algorithms from 2019, Camille explained. "And these are the innovations Dr. Webb has been commercializing through Medcore Industries, while simultaneously attacking my newer CardioPredict technology." Malcolm's presentation followed, showing financial transaction records that traced $3.2 million in payments from Medcore to Webb's laboratory, directly correlating with his public attacks on competing technologies. "Webb hasn't just been stealing research," Malcolm explained with devastating precision. "He's been paid to discredit innovations that threaten his commercial interests." Martin's presentation concluded the evisceration, displaying patient safety incident reports that Webb had attributed to competing technologies when they actually involved his own stolen algorithms. 17 adverse events, Martin said quietly, all involving Medcore devices using stolen algorithms, all covered up by the man who's been attacking my mother for imaginary safety violations. The audience sat in stunned silence as the scope of Webb's deception became clear. This wasn't just professional jealousy. It was systematic fraud, theft, and endangerment of patient safety for financial gain. Dr. Patricia Hawkins from the FDA stood up in the back of the room, her expression grim with official authority. "Dr. Webb," she announced formally, "the FDA is immediately suspending all Medcore device implementations pending investigation of these safety incident cover-ups. Additionally, we're reversing the CardioPredict suspension and issuing a formal commendation for Dr. Edmond's technology based on the evidence presented today." Agent Michael Torres from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division appeared near the room's exit, his presence indicating that Webb's problems extended far beyond medical board sanctions. "Webb," Agent Torres called out, "we need to discuss your financial relationships with Medcore Industries and several offshore investment groups currently under federal investigation." As FBI agents moved toward the podium, Webb's carefully constructed world collapsed entirely. The man who had orchestrated months of attacks on Camille's family and technology was about to face federal charges for medical fraud and securities manipulation. But for Camille, the most important moment came when Adrian stepped beside her at the front of the room, taking her hand in full view of the medical community that had questioned their professional relationship. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian said clearly, "Dr. Webb has questioned whether my endorsement of CardioPredict technology was influenced by my romantic feelings for Dr. Edmond. He's absolutely correct. It was influenced by love. Love for innovative medicine that saves lives, love for intellectual honesty over professional jealousy, and love for a brilliant woman whose work represents the future of cardiac care." He turned to face Camille directly, his gray eyes bright with emotion and determination. "Camille," he said, his voice carrying throughout the silent auditorium, "6 months ago I nearly destroyed something beautiful because of my own fear and pain. Today, I want to build something beautiful that will last forever." Adrian dropped to one knee, producing a ring that caught the conference room lights like captured starlight. The audience gasped collectively, realizing they were witnessing not just professional vindication, but the most romantic moment in medical conference history. "Dr. Camille Edmond," Adrian continued, his voice strong and sure, "will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life supporting your innovations, protecting your family, and proving that love makes everything stronger, including medicine?" Tears flowed freely down Camille's face as she looked at this remarkable man who had transformed from enemy to champion to life partner, who had risked everything to stand beside her against coordinated attacks, who was now proposing marriage in front of 2,000 medical professionals and live television cameras. "Yes," she said clearly, her voice carrying throughout the auditorium. "Yes, Adrian Sinclair, I will marry you, because you've shown me that the greatest innovations happen when brilliant minds work together, when love enhances rather than compromises professional excellence, and when families choose each other through both triumph and crisis." A standing ovation lasted nearly 10 minutes. Medical professionals throughout the auditorium rose to their feet, many wiping away tears, all clearly moved by the combination of professional vindication and personal triumph they had witnessed. Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin rushed to embrace their mother, while Emma threw her arms around her father, all 4 children beaming with joy at the family they were officially creating. "Mom," Marcus whispered in her ear, "that was the most amazing presentation ever, better than any IPO launch." "Dad," Emma said softly to Adrian, "Mom would have loved this. She would have been so happy to see you find love again." Dr. Richard Chen approached with tears in his eyes, embracing Camille warmly. "My dear, you've just delivered the most important presentation of your career, not just the cardio-predict vindication, the demonstration that love and professional excellence can coexist beautifully." As the auditorium gradually emptied, federal agents escorting Webb toward a future of criminal prosecution, Camille and Adrian found themselves surrounded by their children and closest supporters. "What happens now?" Malcolm asked practically. "With cardio-predict? With Webb's prosecution? With everything?" "Now," Adrian replied, his arm around Camille's waist. "We plan a wedding, expand cardio-predict implementations worldwide, and build the most brilliant medical family in New York City." Speaking of family, Lila appeared with her laptop, grinning widely. Edmund Technology's stock just hit an all-time high. Apparently, public marriage proposals by renowned surgeons are excellent for medical technology companies. "And Harvard Medical School just called," David Sinclair added, approaching with his own smile. "They'd like to discuss not just the department head position, but establishing a joint cardio-predict research center with Dr. Edmund as co-director." "Joint research center?" Camille's eyes lit up with possibilities. "Harvard Edmund Cardiac Innovation Institute," Adrian confirmed, "combining traditional surgical excellence with revolutionary diagnostic technology. We'd be building the future of cardiac medicine together." As they left the conference center, hand in hand, surrounded by their brilliant children and closest friends, Camille realized that Webb's intended destruction had actually created something far more beautiful than she'd ever imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest victories came, not from individual achievement, but from finding the courage to love completely, trust absolutely, and build something extraordinary together. The future of cardiac medicine and their family had never looked brighter. 6 months later, the Harvard Edmund Cardiac Innovation Institute stood gleaming in Boston's medical district, a testament to what brilliant minds could accomplish when love enhanced rather than compromised professional excellence. The building's nameplate read Sinclair Edmund Family Research Center, reflecting both their marriage and their shared commitment to revolutionizing cardiac care. Inside the state-of-the-art facility, cardio-predict technology was being integrated with surgical training programs that would prepare the next generation of cardiac surgeons. Emma Sinclair Edmund worked alongside Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin on bioengineering projects that pushed the boundaries of medical possibility, while their parents collaborated on innovations that were saving thousands of lives worldwide. Dr. Marcus Webb had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for medical fraud and securities manipulation, his medical license permanently revoked. Preston Hastings faced his own federal charges for financial crimes, his desperate attempt to claim paternity, now a footnote in court documents that had cost him his remaining inheritance. "Mrs. Sinclair Edmund," Adrian said softly, finding his wife in their shared research lab as she reviewed cardio-predict implementation data from hospitals across 6 continents. "You have that look again." "What look?" Camille smiled, turning from her monitors to face the man who had transformed from enemy to life partner. "The look that says you're about to revolutionize medicine again," Adrian replied, moving to embrace her. "Also the look that says you have news that's going to change our family." Camille's hand moved unconsciously to her still flat abdomen, her smile widening with the secret she'd been waiting to share. "How did you know?" "Because I'm married to a genius who glows when she's creating something extraordinary," Adrian murmured against her ear. "Whether it's life-saving technology or new life itself." "Are you ready for 5 brilliant children instead of 4? She asked softly. "With you, I'm ready for anything." My beautiful royal story family. What challenges have you overcome that made you stronger? What second chances have transformed your life? Their story proved that sometimes the greatest love grows from the ashes of our biggest mistakes, that professional excellence and personal happiness can enhance each other beautifully, and that families are built not just through blood, but through choosing to stand together against whatever storms may come. Share your own stories of second chances and redemption in the comments below. Like this video if you believe in love that makes everything stronger. Subscribe to Sage King Stories for tomorrow's passionate tale of transformation and the courage to choose love over fear.